The crystal chandeliers of La Lumiere cast dancing shadows across the white marble floors as the evening crowd began to arrive. The restaurant sat on the corner of Fifth Avenue, its floor-to-ceiling windows offering a breathtaking view of the city's skyline, a glittering kingdom of possibility and dreams. This wasn't just any restaurant. It was the restaurant where celebrities dined, where proposals happened, where every table told a story of success. But tonight's story would be different. Sarah Martinez adjusted her simple black apron and tucked a strand of dark hair behind her ear. At 32, she moved through the dining room with quiet grace, carrying plates with the practiced ease of someone who had done this 1,000 times before. To everyone watching, she was just another waitress, invisible, forgettable, someone to order around. No one knew the truth. 3 years ago, Sarah had stood in this very spot with nothing but a dream and a determination forged in the fires of struggle. She'd worked 3 jobs cleaning offices at dawn, waiting tables during the day, and studying business management at night. She'd eaten ramen for dinner more times than she could count. She'd cried in her studio apartment, wondering if she'd ever escape the cycle of poverty that had defined her childhood. But she had a vision, and more importantly, she had grit. When the previous owner of La Lumiere decided to sell, everyone laughed at Sarah's offer. A waitress buying a multi-million-dollar restaurant? Impossible. But Sarah had spent years saving every penny, building relationships with investors, and most importantly, learning every single aspect of the business from the ground up. She didn't just want to own a restaurant, she wanted to understand its heartbeat, its soul. Now, she owned it all. But she'd made a promise to herself. Once a week, she would work the floor as a regular waitress. She needed to stay grounded, to remember where she came from, to ensure that every employee from the dishwasher to the sommelier was treated with dignity and respect. Tonight was one of those nights, and tonight she would be tested. The brass doors swung open, and in walked Veronica Ashford-Kent, her Hermes Birkin bag swinging from her arm like a weapon of social status. Her designer heels clicked against the marble with the sharp precision of entitlement. Behind her followed her entourage to equally polished women whose faces bore the tight, frozen expressions of too much Botox and too little kindness. "Table for 3, Veronica announced, not asking, not requesting, announcing. Sarah approached with a warm smile. "Good evening. Welcome to La Lumiere. Do you have a reservation?" Veronica's eyes swept over Sarah with the kind of disdain usually reserved for discarded gum on a sidewalk. "Do you know who I am?" "I don't need reservations." "I understand," Sarah said gently, "but we're completely booked tonight. However, I'd be happy to check if—" "Listen, sweetheart," Veronica cut her off, the word dripping with condescension. "I'm on the board of 3 charities. My husband owns half the real estate in this city, and I have 2 million followers on Instagram. Now, I suggest you find me a table before I post about the terrible service here." Sarah felt the familiar burn of humiliation in her chest, the same feeling she'd experienced countless times when she actually was just a struggling waitress, when people treated her like she was nothing. But she breathed deeply, channeling that pain into compassion. "I sincerely apologize for the inconvenience. Let me see what I can arrange." Sarah moved to the hostess stand, and within moments she'd reorganized the seating to accommodate them at one of the best tables by the window. As she led them to their seats, one of Veronica's friends whispered loudly enough for Sarah to hear, "I can't believe we have to be seated by the help. Where's a real host?" Throughout the dinner service, Veronica and her friends treated Sarah like a personal servant put on earth solely to absorb their abuse. Every request came with a sneer, every interaction dripped with contempt. "This water has ice." "I said nitrogen monoxide ice." "Are you incompetent?" Veronica snapped, pushing the glass so hard it nearly spilled on Sarah's apron. "My apologies. I'll get you a fresh glass immediately." Sarah's voice remained calm, kind, and make it fast. "God, where do they find these people?" one friend muttered. When Sarah brought the menu, Veronica looked her up and down with disgust. You know, if you spent less time eating the food here and more time serving it properly, you might actually be good at your job. The comment about her weight, Sarah's lifelong insecurity, landed like a physical blow. But she simply nodded and said, "I'll give you a few moments to decide." As she walked away, she heard their laughter echoing behind her. The cruelty continued. They sent back perfectly prepared dishes, claiming they were inedible. They snapped their fingers at Sarah like she was a dog. They called her sweetie, honey, and girl in tones that stripped away her humanity. Other diners began to notice. Some looked uncomfortable. Others whispered among themselves. The staff watched with barely concealed anger. They knew who Sarah really was, and watching their beloved boss endure this abuse was torture. Marcus, the head chef who'd known Sarah since her original waitressing days, emerged from the kitchen with fire in his eyes. Sarah caught his gaze and gave a subtle shake of her head. "Not yet," her eyes said. "Let it play out. Excuse me, waitress." Veronica's voice cut through the elegant dining room like a knife. "This wine is completely wrong. Did you even listen when I ordered? Or were you too busy daydreaming about, well, whatever people like you dream about?" Sarah approached the table once more. "I'm sorry you're not satisfied. I'd be happy to. I don't want your happiness," Veronica spat. "I want competence. I want someone who actually belongs in a place like this." She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a cruel whisper. "Let's be honest, you're probably only working here because of some diversity quota. This is a five-star restaurant, not a charity case." The dining room fell silent. Even the gentle classical music seemed to fade. Sarah stood there, every racist, classist insult she'd ever endured flooding back. Every time someone had judged her by her accent, her background, her old clothes. Every time someone had made her feel small. But then she looked around. She saw Marcus in the kitchen doorway, his face filled with protective rage. She saw her servers, Julia, who was putting herself through nursing school. David, who was supporting his sick mother. Chen, who'd emigrated here with nothing but hope. She saw the other diners, some with tears in their eyes, witnessing this cruelty. And she made her choice. Sarah straightened her spine, and suddenly, something shifted in her demeanor. The humble waitress posture melted away, replaced by the quiet, unshakable confidence of someone who had built an empire from ashes. "You're absolutely right about one thing," Sarah said, her voice clear and strong. "This is a five-star restaurant. And I take that very seriously." She untied her apron, folded it carefully, and set it on the table between them. "My name is Sarah Martinez. I'm not just a waitress, though. I'm proud to have been one. I'm the owner of La Lumiere. I built this restaurant from the ground up after working 3 jobs for 7 years. I learned every position in this industry because I believe that everyone who works here deserves respect, from our dishwashers to our sommeliers, to our guests." Veronica's face went white. Her friends froze champagne glasses halfway to their lips. "I work the floor once a week as a reminder of where I came from and to ensure that no one in my establishment is ever treated the way you've treated me tonight. Because I remember what it feels like. I remember every insult, every dismissal, every moment someone made me feel worthless because of my job or my background. The entire restaurant was watching now." Sarah's voice carried not anger, but something more powerful: truth. "But here's what you don't understand. That waitress you were so cruel to. She might be working here to pay for her mother's cancer treatment. She might be putting herself through medical school. She might be supporting 3 kids on her own. She might be, like I was, one step away from achieving her dreams." Sarah leaned down, her eyes meeting Veronica's. "Or she might be the person who will one day own the company where you shop, eat, or work. You simply don't know. And that's why kindness isn't just a nicety, it's a necessity." Veronica's hands were shaking. Tears, real tears, began streaming down her carefully made-up face, taking mascara with them. I'm so sorry," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I'm so incredibly sorry." For the first time that evening, Sarah saw past the designer clothes and the cruel facade. She saw a woman who'd probably learned this behavior from others. It'd been taught that putting people down would somehow elevate her own worth. Sarah pulled out a chair and sat down at their table, something a waitress would never do, but an owner could. "Do you want to know why I still wait tables?" Sarah asked gently. "It's because success without humility is just ego. Wealth without kindness is just greed. Power without compassion is just tyranny. My grandmother cleaned houses her entire life. She raised 3 children on those wages. She was the kindest, wisest person I ever knew. And society treated her like she was invisible." Sarah's eyes glistened with memory. "Before she died, she told me, Mia, when you make it, and you will never forget that everyone has a story. Everyone is fighting battles you know nothing about. Treat people with kindness, not because of who they are, but because of who you are." Veronica covered her face with her hands, her shoulders shaking with sobs. "I've become exactly what I hate. My mother. She was a housekeeper when I was young. She worked so hard. And I've spent my whole adult life running from that. Proving I'm better, treating people the way I was afraid of being treated." The vulnerability in that moment was breathtaking. Sarah reached across the table and gently touched Veronica's hand. "It's not too late to change. It's never too late to choose kindness." What happened next would become the most shared moment on social media that month. One of the other diners had recorded part of the exchange, and it went viral not for the cruelty, but for what came after. Sarah invited Veronica and her friends to stay. She personally prepared a meal for them, explaining each dish, sharing the stories of the immigrants, single mothers, and dreamers who made up her kitchen staff. She introduced them to Marcus, whose grandmother's recipes inspired half the menu, to Julia, whose hands had just finished a 12-hour shift before her night classes, to David, who'd just received his mother's first positive cancer screening. By the end of the evening, Veronica had donated $50,000 to a fund Sarah had created for hospitality workers pursuing education. But more than that, something fundamental had shifted in her. 3 months later, Veronica returned not as a bully, but as a volunteer in Sarah's new mentorship program, using her business connections to help young women from disadvantaged backgrounds. She brought her daughters this time, wanting them to learn the lesson she'd de-learned too late. That true class has nothing to do with money, and everything to do with how you treat others. La Lumiere became more than a restaurant. It became a symbol. Sarah's story was featured in every major publication. But she used that platform not to elevate herself, but to shine a light on every person working in service industries. Every dreamer scraping by, every human being just trying to survive with dignity. She started a foundation called the Invisible No More Project, advocating for fair wages, respect, and opportunities for service workers. The viral video sparked a movement #kindness as class began trending, with millions sharing stories of how service workers had impacted their lives. But Sarah never forgot that night. She kept Veronica's thank you card in her office, alongside her grandmother's old apron, the one she'd worn during her cleaning jobs. 2 symbols of her journey, where she'd been, and where kindness could lead. Because in the end, Sarah's greatest victory wasn't owning a successful restaurant. It was proving that dignity isn't determined by your position. Kindness is the truest form of strength, and every person you meet deserves to be treated with respect because you simply never know what they've overcome, what they're going through, or what they'll become. The waitress was the owner. But more importantly, the owner never forgot she was once the waitress. And that made all the difference.